This is the last warning. This is the last warning. Those 6 words, broadcast over military radio by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, were directed at 2 of the most powerful warships in the United States Navy fleet, USS Michael Murphy, USS Frank E. Peterson, Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. 510 feet long, loaded with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Standard missile interceptors, deck guns, torpedoes, and the most advanced naval combat systems in the world. Each one capable of engaging dozens of targets simultaneously. Each one crewed by over 280 highly trained American sailors. Iran told them, "Enter the Strait of Hormuz and we shoot." And then something extraordinary happened. The destroyers answered. "No challenge is intended to you," the American ship replied over the radio. "I intend to abide by rules of our government's ceasefire." And then, at least in the first encounter, they turned around. The IRGC launched a drone in the direction of the destroyers. The destroyers backed off. Let that sink in. The United States Navy, the most powerful naval force in the history of human civilization, was warned off from a narrow waterway by the naval arm of a country that has been under Western sanctions for 47 years. But here is where this story gets genuinely fascinating. Because this is not a story of American weakness, and it's not a story of Iranian invincibility. It is something far more complex and far more important than either of those simple narratives. It is the story of how a country that cannot match America in any conventional military dimension has spent 4 decades building a system specifically designed to make 21 miles of ocean too dangerous for the world's greatest navy to control. And how that system, right now in real time in May 2026, is actually working. Welcome back. Today we go deep inside the military strategy that Iran spent 47 years building, and that is now determining the outcome of the most consequential energy crisis in modern history. Stay with me. This is the most important military analysis you're going to find on this topic. Before we can understand how Iran is countering the U.S. Navy, we need to understand the battlefield. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a strategic choke point. It is, from a military perspective, one of the most dangerous pieces of water on Earth for a large naval force to operate in. Picture this. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 21 miles. For context, on a clear day, you could see from one side to the other. The shipping lanes, where massive oil tankers are required to travel, are even narrower. There are 2 shipping lanes, each just 2 miles wide, separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. 2 miles wide. That is the corridor that carries 20% of the world's oil every single day. Now imagine you are an American naval commander. You have been ordered to escort commercial ships through this corridor. You are sailing your 510-foot destroyer through a channel that is barely wider than the ship is long, flanked on both sides by Iranian territory. On your left, the Iranian coast, dotted with hardened missile bunkers, some buried up to 500 meters underground, some sections of which are actually underwater. On your right, the Iranian island of Qeshm, one of the largest islands in the Persian Gulf, packed with IRGC Navy installations. Above you, Iranian drone and surveillance aircraft tracking your every movement. Below you, potentially, sea mines, which Iran has laid in the strait and some of which, according to one intelligence report, Iran itself has lost track of. In front of you, fast attack boats, dozens of them, small, agile, and armed, capable of swarming your ship from multiple directions simultaneously at speeds of over 40 knots. Some of them are suicide boats, packed with explosives and willing to die for the mission. And on the Iranian coast, mere miles away, batteries of anti-ship cruise missiles and ballistic missiles with maneuvering warheads that can track and hit a moving ship at close range, providing almost no time for a defensive response. Navy officials, before Project Freedom began, described the Strait of Hormuz in a single phrase that tells you everything you need to know about why they had been avoiding it for months. They called it a kill box. Not a risk zone, not a contested area, a kill box. A place specifically designed over decades of Iranian military investment to maximize the likelihood of killing American sailors and sinking American ships. This is the environment into which Trump sent the fleet on May 4, 2026. And understanding why Iran's system is so effective and so difficult to defeat requires understanding something that most Western news coverage almost completely ignores. Iran's military strategy is not built to win a conventional war with America. It is built to make winning too expensive. Iran's strategy for controlling the Strait of Hormuz has been 4 decades in the making. It is not improvised. It is not desperate. It is the product of meticulous strategic planning, informed by a clear-eyed analysis of American military strengths and of exactly how to neutralize them. The system has 4 distinct layers, each designed to complement the others. Together, they create what military analysts call a layered kill zone, a system where even if you defeat one layer, the next one is waiting, where every layer forces America to expend resources, missiles, interceptors, aircraft, time, political capital that cannot be easily replaced. Layer 1. The mines. Iran's mine stockpile is estimated at between 5,000 and 6,000 units, including sophisticated bottom mines and influence mines, mines that sit on the seabed and detonate based on the magnetic signature, acoustic signature, or pressure wave of a passing vessel. These are not the simple floating mines of World War I. They are difficult to detect, extremely difficult to clear, and disproportionately disruptive. Here is the military genius of mines in a confined waterway. You don't need to blow up a ship. You just need to create the possibility that a mine is there. The moment a minefield is suspected, even if no mine has actually been found, all commercial shipping stops. Insurance companies withdraw coverage. Shipping companies redirect their vessels. The economic effect of a minefield is achieved without detonating a single mine. Iran does not even need a perfect minefield. It needs doubt. A suspected minefield in a 2-mile shipping lane accomplishes the same strategic objective as an actual minefield. And clearing mines is an agonizingly slow process. Mine countermeasure operations require specialized ships, MCM vessels, operating at very low speeds, with hull-mounted sonar systems, underwater vehicles, and helicopters. In a real combat environment, where those MCM ships are themselves being targeted by drones, missiles, and fast attack boats, the process becomes even more dangerous and even slower. U.S. Central Command confirmed on April 23rd that President Trump had ordered the Navy to destroy any Iranian boats laying mines in Hormuz. They destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels on March 10th, but that still left an unknown number of mines already in the water, mines which, according to one intelligence report, even Iran itself cannot fully locate. Iran lost track of its own mines. The strait has become a minefield that neither side can fully map. Layer 2. The swarm. The IRGC Navy, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, which is distinct from Iran's regular navy and specifically designed for Persian Gulf and Hormuz combat, is built around fast attack craft. Hundreds of small, agile speedboats, armed with rockets, anti-ship missiles, and in some cases, explosive payloads for suicide attacks. Their doctrine, developed specifically for fighting a technologically superior enemy in a confined waterway, is called swarm tactics. Instead of attacking with 1 or 2 large ships that can be easily tracked and destroyed by American missiles, they attack with dozens or hundreds of small craft simultaneously, from multiple directions, at high speed. A single American destroyer can engage a large number of targets with its missile systems, but each intercept expends an expensive, finite weapon. Standard missile interceptors, the primary air defense weapon of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, cost over $4 million each. Iran's small speedboats cost less than $500,000 each. The math is deliberately asymmetric. Iran is forcing America to spend $4 million for every $500,000 boat it destroys. If the IRGC sends 50 boats in a swarm, America might shoot down all 50, at a cost of $200 million in interceptors, while Iran spends $25 million in boats. Do this enough times, and America's magazines, its finite supply of interceptor missiles, begin to run low. Resupply takes time, and in the narrow waters of the strait, a ship that has expended its interceptor supply is extraordinarily vulnerable. Layer 3. The shore-based missiles. This is Iran's most powerful layer, and the one that most fundamentally changes the military equation in the Strait. Beginning in the late 1990s, Iran began installing anti-ship cruise missiles and ballistic missiles along its coastline facing the Strait of Hormuz. These are not exposed, above-ground launchers. They are buried in reinforced concrete bunkers, in what Iranian military media calls missile cities. Some built up to 500 meters underground, some with sections that are literally underwater. The USS Gerald R. Ford, America's most advanced nuclear carrier, can generate enormous combat power. But if it approaches within range of the Iranian coast, it comes within range of missiles that can be launched from tunnels that even 5,000-pound bunker-busting bombs struggle to destroy. U.S. Central Command employed multiple GBU-72 5,000-pound penetrator munitions against underground missile silos along the Iranian coast in March 2026. The strikes damaged many sites, but the missile systems are distributed, redundant, and survivable. Even after significant American bombardment, Iran retains sufficient shore-based missile capacity to threaten ships transiting the strait. The Khalij Fars, Iran's anti-ship ballistic missile, is particularly concerning. It has a range of approximately 300 kilometers, carries a maneuvering re-entry vehicle with an electro-optical seeker for terminal guidance, and can track and hit a moving ship. It arrives at hypersonic speed, providing compressed decision time for American defensive systems. Pairing ballistic missiles with cruise missiles and drones, arriving from different directions at different speeds and altitudes, creates a sensor and defensive system challenge that even the most sophisticated Aegis combat systems find extremely taxing. Layer 4. GPS jamming and satellite spoofing. The fourth and most technologically subtle layer of Iran's Hormuz strategy is electronic warfare, specifically GPS jamming and satellite navigation spoofing. Commercial ships navigate using GPS. Naval vessels use more sophisticated navigation systems, but GPS remains important. By jamming GPS signals in the strait, and by spoofing satellite navigation systems to feed false position data to ship computers, Iran can make navigation through the narrow, mine-threatened corridor dramatically more dangerous. A commercial captain who is told by his navigation system that he is in the center of the shipping lane when he is actually 400 meters to the left is at serious risk of running aground, hitting a mine, or sailing into Iranian territorial waters, where IRGC Navy boats are waiting. This is precisely what happened to the Thai cargo ship Mayuri Nari on March 11th. It ran aground on the shores of Iran's Keshm Island. 20 sailors were rescued. 3 were not found for weeks. Their remains eventually discovered when a specialized rescue team boarded the grounded vessel. Navigation spoofing. In a strait filled with mines, with shore-based missiles targeting anything that looks like a threat. This is what America's fleet sailed into. On May 3, 2026, President Trump announced Project Freedom. The name tells you everything about the political framing. Freedom. The strait will be free. America will open it. But the operational reality was considerably more complex than the branding. Here is what CENTCOM actually deployed for Project Freedom. Destroyers, more than 100 aircraft, unmanned platforms, and 15,000 service members. A third aircraft carrier, in addition to the 2 already in the region, plus thousands of Marines and paratroopers, were expected to arrive later in May. The rules of engagement were changed. U.S. forces were now authorized to strike IRGC fast attack boats and Iranian missile batteries that posed an immediate threat to ships crossing the strait. And the results of Day 1? CENTCOM Chief Admiral Brad Cooper reported that U.S. forces had destroyed 6 Iranian small boats targeting civilian vessels. 2 American-flagged merchant ships had successfully transited the strait. U.S. destroyers had transited the strait and were now operating in the Persian Gulf. 6 boats destroyed. 2 merchant ships through. 2 destroyers transited. Out of the 2,000 vessels sitting trapped in the Persian Gulf. To be fair, Day 1 was always going to be symbolic, not definitive. The point of the initial transit was to demonstrate that America was willing to enter the kill box, to prove to Iran, and to the world watching, that the U.S. Navy was not permanently deterred. And the destroyers made a point of demonstrating that they had transited. USS Michael Murphy deliberately turned on its automatic identification system, the transponder that broadcasts a ship's identity and position, on the far side of the strait. In normal operations, Navy ships sail with AIS off to avoid giving adversaries a tracking beacon. Turning AIS on after transiting was a message. Look where we are. We sailed through. We're still here. You just don't throw AIS on by accident on a Navy ship, said Campbell University professor Salvatore Mercogliano, who specializes in military and maritime history. This is purposeful. They wanted to turn this on the far side of the Strait of Hormuz to demonstrate that they have sailed through. But here is the part that the Trump administration was considerably less vocal about. According to two senior U.S. officials cited by the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. Navy is not currently conducting full naval escorts of commercial vessels. Project Freedom, as they described it, is more of an international shipping coordination effort. Axios reported, citing two U.S. officials, that rather than accompany commercial vessels through the strait, the Navy would provide them with information about the best ways to navigate and avoid Iranian mines. Information, not escort. Information. So the full picture of day one of Project Freedom looks like this. 2 American destroyers sailed through the strait. 2 American-flagged merchant ships followed. 6 Iranian speedboats were destroyed. Iran attacked the UAE's Fujairah oil bypass facility in response, and hundreds of other vessels remained trapped in the Persian Gulf. That is a significant day. It is not a decisive victory. And Iran's parliament speaker made Iran's own assessment of the situation crystal clear, posting on social media that the continuation of the current situation is intolerable for the United States, while claiming Iran has not even started yet. Whether that is bluster or genuine military capacity is the question the entire world is watching. Here is the most important military fact about the Strait of Hormuz that almost nobody in mainstream media coverage adequately explains. The United States Navy's aircraft carriers, the USS Gerald R. Ford, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the USS Abraham Lincoln, are not in the strait. They are sitting well offshore, outside the range of Iran's shore-based anti-ship missiles. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate operational decision based on a realistic assessment of the threat environment inside the strait. Since the late 1990s, when American intelligence detected Iran installing anti-ship missile batteries along the Hormuz coastline, the U.S. Navy began reducing carrier transits through the strait. Today, those carriers operate in the Gulf of Oman, outside the Persian Gulf, outside the range of Iran's most dangerous coastal missiles. The implications of this are enormous. Aircraft carriers are America's primary power projection tool. The ability to put a carrier air wing, 60-plus aircraft, within striking range of a target is what allows America to project overwhelming military force almost anywhere on Earth. But inside the Strait of Hormuz, that calculus breaks down. A carrier operating inside the strait would be within range of hundreds of Iranian anti-ship missiles. It would be in waters that may be mined. It would be in a waterway narrow enough that its maneuverability, one of its key defenses, would be severely constrained. A carrier cannot sail at 30 knots in a 2-mile-wide shipping lane. Retired Associate Professor James Russell from the Naval Postgraduate School wrote with devastating clarity about this reality. The close proximity of Iranian systems in the strait greatly reduces the warning times for any attacks. American vessels are also vulnerable to mines and various unmanned systems both above and underwater. Despite discovering its vulnerability to Iranian mines during Operation Earnest Will in the Iran-Iraq War 40 years ago, the Navy today still has no credible anti-mine ships to mitigate the threat. No credible anti-mine ships, in a strait that may contain up to 6,000 Iranian mines. Professor Russell also pointed to the lesson of the Russia-Ukraine war that has most alarmed American naval planners. Ukraine successfully drove Russia's Black Sea fleet from the western Black Sea through attacks by missiles and unmanned systems, weapons that are far cheaper than the ships they sank. Iran has integrated every one of those lessons into its Hormuz strategy. The result is what military analysts call an A2AD environment, anti-access, area denial. a zone where America cannot freely project power because the cost of entering is too high. Not impossible, not suicidal, but expensive enough. In ships, in interceptor missiles, in sailors' lives, in political capital at home, that every decision to operate inside the kill box requires careful calculation. This is exactly why Trump's description of the Strait as an area where America can simply guide ships through is politically convenient but militarily incomplete. The Strait can be entered. The U.S. has proven that. But controlling it, continuously, reliably, for the hundreds of ships that need to pass, is a fundamentally different military challenge. When Trump announced Project Freedom on May 3rd, Iran's response was not to send its navy into a conventional battle with American destroyers. That would be suicidal. Iran has no surface combatants that can match an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in a direct engagement. Iran's response was exactly what its strategy has always been: asymmetric, multi-domain, designed to impose costs at every layer. Layer 1 response: the Fujairah strike. On the same day Project Freedom launched, an Iranian drone punched through UAE air defenses and ignited a fire at the Fujairah oil industry zone, the UAE's bypass pipeline terminus specifically built to circumvent the closed strait. The message was explicit: if you open one route, we'll hit the alternatives. Layer 2 response: fast boat attacks. IRGC speedboats swarmed commercial ships in the strait on May 4th. U.S. helicopters sank 6 of them. But for every boat that was sunk, others were launching elsewhere. For every intercept America fired, Iran noted the cost. Layer 3 response: missile and drone strikes on the UAE. For the second consecutive day on May 5th, Iran attacked UAE territory. Schools were closed, aircraft turned around. The UAE's willingness to support Project Freedom, it had offered to join the U.S.-led effort, was being directly tested. Layer 4 response: the information war. Iranian state media claimed the IRGC had struck an American naval vessel with 2 missiles. CENTCOM denied it. Iranian Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf posted that the security of shipping and energy transit under the control of the United States and its allies has been jeopardized, and that Iran's response was coming. And then there was the diplomatic layer. Iran's Foreign Minister Arakchi warned the U.S. and UAE to be wary of being dragged back into a quagmire. The Iranian parliament threatened to pass a law requiring all non-hostile ships to pay tolls to transit, essentially institutionalizing Iranian control over an international waterway. Iran's counter-strategy to Project Freedom was comprehensive and coordinated. It imposed costs at every level: military, economic, diplomatic, psychological, without directly confronting the U.S. Navy in the kind of conventional naval battle that Iran could not win. This is precisely the magazine drain strategy that military analysts had predicted Iran would employ. Force America to keep firing expensive interceptors. Force America to keep sinking cheap boats. Force America to keep flying sorties, keep clearing mines, keep escorting ships, one at a time in a 2-mile-wide shipping lane surrounded by missiles and drones, while the global economy bleeds and American public support for the war erodes. Only 32% of Americans support the war, according to polls. Trump himself acknowledged this number while dismissing the polling as fake. But even his dismissal of the polls confirmed he's aware of the domestic political pressure. And that domestic pressure, the $6 gas in California, the inflation, the economic strain, is as much a part of Iran's strategy as any missile or mine. So here is the question that matters most. Can America win this? Can Project Freedom succeed? Can the U.S. Navy force the Strait of Hormuz open reliably, sustainably, and without catastrophic losses? The honest answer is yes, probably. But not quickly, not cheaply, and not without risks that haven't fully materialized yet. Here is what America has going for it. The IRGC Navy, while effective in asymmetric operations, has taken significant losses. U.S. and Israeli strikes destroyed hardened missile bunkers along the coast. The Iranian naval commander responsible for Hormuz operations, Ali Reza Tangsiri, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in late March. The mine-laying capability has been degraded. The fast attack boat fleet, while still dangerous, has had significant numbers destroyed. America's logistics are enormous. The third carrier, the additional Marines and paratroopers, the long-range cruise missiles flowing into the region, these represent a military buildup that Iran, with its degraded air defenses and depleted missile inventories, cannot match conventionally. And the mine clearance is proceeding, slowly. Littoral combat ships with hull-mounted sonar and underwater drones are working through the strait. It could take weeks or months to fully clear, but it is happening. But here is what Iran has going for it. Its most survivable launchers, the ones deepest underground, the ones on Keshem Island, the ones in the dispersed coastal positions, have not been destroyed. They remain operational. They remain a threat to any ship, commercial or naval, that transits the strait. The mines that have already been laid cannot be unlaid. Every day of mine clearance operations is another day when commercial shippers are not routing their vessels through the strait. The economic damage is being done whether or not America eventually opens the waterway. And the diplomatic clock is ticking. Iran has sent a 14-point peace proposal. Trump has not accepted it, but has not entirely rejected it. The window for a negotiated settlement, one that avoids a round two of full military strikes, is narrowing, not widening. Energy analyst Rapidan Energy founder Bob McNally told CNBC that if America successfully weakens Iran's ability to threaten ship traffic, conditions for a lasting ceasefire with full Hormuz reopening could be in place by late May 2026. That is the optimistic scenario. The pessimistic scenario is that Iran escalates further, hitting more Gulf infrastructure, expanding attacks on U.S. allies, and forcing America into either a massive new military campaign or a negotiated settlement that gives Tehran meaningful concessions. CENTCOM Chief Admiral Brad Cooper's message to Iranian forces after day one of Project Freedom was clear. He strongly advised Iranian forces to stay away from the U.S. military. Iran's parliament speaker's response was equally clear. Iran has not even started yet. Somewhere in that gap, between American strength and Iranian asymmetric resilience, lies the outcome that will determine oil prices, global economic stability, and the shape of the Middle East for decades to come. This is the last warning. 6 words, broadcast over military radio. And the most powerful navy in the history of human civilization had to make a decision about whether to sail through a 2-mile-wide corridor lined with missiles, mined with up to 6,000 underwater bombs, swarmed by hundreds of speedboats, and jammed with electronic warfare. That is the military reality of the Strait of Hormuz in May 2026. Not a story of American weakness, not a story of Iranian invincibility. A story of 47 years of strategic planning, of asymmetric warfare, of a country that understood, long before the first missile was fired, that the way to fight the world's greatest navy was not to build a bigger navy, but to make its home waters too dangerous to operate in freely. That strategy is working. Imperfectly, incompletely, but working. And every American paying $6 for gas in California is living with the consequences. Share this video with someone who wants the real military picture, not the political spin. Hit like if this gave you an understanding you couldn't find anywhere else. Subscribe for the next one.